freshest on deck when I'm first out the lot. I got hairs at my neck where they coming at the spot. They want a little pinch, but I don't need one pot to get pissed in this bitch before they gonna drop. I'm like, damn, man, what you think you got? You think you gonna be a Sandman and put me down on a drop? I'm like, nah, bro, you're gonna get took before you get a second chance, before you catch a look fresh to death. You can tell that I don't need no enemy to take something that they don't want. Man, that's not even part of your synergy. I'm like 10 times tenfold out the century. You gonna try to take one thing before you can even squeeze a sneak peek? Man, you're gonna be a small. Here the fact checkers would be having that model of her, and then the model that we're all familiar with, where she's just standing upright holding like a metal plate with a chain and another metal plate with a chain connected with a axle. So the fact checkers would be saying the high rate and expulsions of everything I just explained, where she is no different in her, those are like both identical images of her. If she was bent over with the alligator and the rat, and if she was standing up straight with the adequate scale, the fact checkers would type in, there is no difference in between these two images. And everyone drinking the Kool-Aid that's actually antifreeze would be shaking their head and saying, you're right, I think that I see that they're exactly the same. And they would be like blacking out with their eyes, so they would literally just see fuzzy balls of the two, and they would be the same. Literal, and I was describing the figure of the justice lady that's blindfolded holding the scale. If she, no, let's be literal here. If she didn't have feeling of nerves in her hand or entire arm for that faction, and she was blindfolded, and then she was literally, the alligator and the rat literally, well, if she couldn't have the feeling of her scale in her arm with the nerves of the teeth biting through her arm or hand or whatever, and she could feel no pain, but then with the weight of the alligator and the rat, it would have to be so obtuse, disproportion, where the scale of a rat to an alligator, the mass propulsion between the two of them is so different. But if her nervous system was so distorted that she could not feel her arm leaning like to the left or to the right, so she would have to be like compensating and bent over to have like the alligator not tip one way and the rat the other way. So the figure of her standing up straight would be like kind of crooked, and so she would have to believe that her arm wasn't being twisted a certain way or the other, with her feet not like having a wider stance so she wouldn't be falling over. That would be a literal depiction of a fact checker's iconic image of the justice system lady. Say everyone who they're scared of, like, drink the Kool-Aid, come on, drink the Kool-Aid. But it's not Kool-Aid, it's like antifreeze. But the fact checker's not allowing people to talk. That's just equivalent to saying like, I don't like multifacets because they can be underappreciated. And then you have everyone who's on the liberal side who don't like people talking because they think it's hate speech. They get all behind it and they say, yeah, let's keep everyone safe. Think these crooks gonna come before they can get a second crumb? I got the whole bread in my stack and they even get one. Slice out the deck. You're gonna get hit with the stick and you ain't gonna come back before you get licked with the brick squad. You know what I'm saying? Cake house residual. That's what I'm saying. You want some frosting? You're gonna get the cream. What's that mean? I got a whole ladle, ain't got no mouths to feed. You want a ladle with no mouths to feed? That means I got a whole lot of bread. Come for me if you need. Yo, look at this weed. This looks like Jack and the Giant with that stock from the beam. Yo, for real though, this thing like 6 feet. How do I know that? Because it's taller than me. Whoop a sway with the pollen and the breeze. Some extra excrement. Fresher than I ever been, greater than I ever was. You think you gonna run on a second hand, you gonna need something on a second thought. Try to play, you get a ray gun stuck to your face. You gonna get some temperature radiation coming out the way. You wanna stick something, you gonna need to get a different maid to mop up the place, cause you gonna get wet in your pants when you see what I can do on advance or in a delay. Give me any time frame and I'm gonna make you pay. But I choose this now because this is my for my own sake, my Rick don't say I didn't tell you, because I think I did. For the minute stop, you're gonna need a second hand. Clock face, do this thing on my own time. That's what the clock pay. For the message the media is pushing is not to critical think. You see these in articles they print on the internet. You see these in the posts that they show video clips of. This woman in the inner city having all her goons around her. She says, I'm not taking a look at the ingredients of the injection. I'm not asking questions. I'm just putting out my arm and taking it. And everyone around her is like, yeah, yeah. And so to not critical think in any of these, it's gonna allow the narrow-mindedness of the not being able to think outside of the box. You're not going to be able to induce the thermodynamics as properly. You're going to be part of the strong and weak interaction. The precursors are already set for, well, you either to turn into something different or be multiplied into the thing that you're opposed to. And I know you might think, well, that's impossible. The constructs are totally different. Contrary-wise, that would only give it the gap between. You know, the saying is the opposites attract. Well, the more different than it were would allow for a bigger gap to be between. And so when you're doing the process of thermodynamics, that would actually give you more of a component for a bigger change, a larger change, where it's the strike zone in baseball, where if you're trying to throw a strike, and if the umpire gives you a large strike zone area, well, it's going to be easier to throw a strike. Whereas the more different the component is, you're going to have that bigger of a box to bang home a grand slam. And you might think, well, pitching a strike and hitting a grand slam are quite the opposite. Well, in this case of thermodynamics, the opposites attract. Whereas the more low pressure, cool that there is, it goes under, pushing the heat of high pressure above. It's a synergistic relation that is inseparable simply through the kinematic state of thermodynamics, which is prominent through each of the forces, electrodynamics, gravity, and lesser through fusion and the weak interaction of the strong and weak interaction. But those are the components of alignment where they're already set, the strong and weak force, that is. So, you know, if you have the plastic crystalline flower we saw over there, and you had the actual real deal flower, those are the strong and the weak forces. They're already set in the particle alignment. Trying to do is morph either one to the other or make a multitude of one or the other. and that would be done through the initiation of thermodynamic, gravity, and electromagnetivity. Thank you. Yep, the law of thermodynamics allows for everything that I just mentioned, or the crystalline structure is uncanny. Do you see the difference between this flower and that? Well, I'm here to tell you, if the degrees of them were similar, and if you had the right instrumentations, you could duplicate them, you could multiply them, so long that they were within 1 degree or multiple degrees. The more access that you had, you could have a bigger variancy. I don't know if this is true because they're both made up of atoms. Yep, the gain of access, what will that do? Well, if you have the persistence of like a lot of power, and this in modern days comes to a multitude of aspect ratios, and when dealing with the proper ones, if you have the info and the right instruments, an angel with their harp or trumpet, this could enact like whatever you would like. And this is hard to understand because the state-of-the-art equipment don't give briefings to citizens because they say that the understanding is of PH degree levels. Just imagine, in more layman's term, if you had like a food truck anywhere, and if this food truck gave away like free food and it just followed you around, and that was one thing that you could always do. This is what the elite have with the banks. There's these banks that are like offshore, but they actually run everything in a 2-tiered system. It's like the news media, and then above them is the banks. And so if you didn't notice, the politicization is all based off news media, because they tell everyone what to think. And they actually found out that they could do it because even the courts allowed for the invocation of that multitude to be enacted on scales that are unimaginable only through the television. But imagine if the banks and all that jazz was just no different than having an ice truck or a lava truck. Now you see over my right shoulder, that's actually not an ice box, that's an ice truck. And so inside of it, you know, you could put like an igloo, you could put multiple igloos. And if you did have that, it would be like a keystone to, well, almost anything, if you had the right instrumentation. If at any point in time I come up missing, there's gonna be all this video evidence of a trove. All the haters are gonna say, well, here's a guy literally walked around talking about worst case scenarios. You know, he had what was coming for him or to him. The most spectacular oddities, and they'd probably be right. But that's how I learn, is through getting like made fun of, because I was a sped and I was taken out of class, and I was told, come with me, get up out of your seat. So in the middle of class I had to leave. So it was only normal